Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Earwax. I'm Colin, and today we're going to be doing a review of the brand new The album, Ensoulment. Alright, guys, so this is the seventh full-length LP from British rockers The, which is really at this point just a solo project of Matt Johnson. He's been the only consistent member of the band throughout their history, and this is also their first full-length album in about 25 years. I think the last full-length album came out in 2000. So yeah, it's been a minute. Very highly anticipated, and man, can I say it does not disappoint. But before we get into the music itself, let's talk about the physical release. So I got this record in today, which is Monday, September 9th. The album came out on Friday, September 6th. So few days after the digital release, but still not bad. Within a week, within a few days. And man, was it worth the wait, because this thing is hefty. 180 ground vinyl, it's a gatefold LP, and a lot of work went into this, so I definitely appreciate that. Anytime a band takes the time and effort to actually think about their physical release, it just makes the whole experience that much better. So we've got the really cool album cover artwork right here on the front, and then on the spine, just the on the back, pretty straightforward, just like the track list, as well as a little, smaller icon of the album. On the actual inside, we've got the gatefold, which is a really cool kind of trippy image of Matt Johnson and this sunburst image coming out from his guitar. And then it came with, which I think is really cool, instead of like a traditional lyric sheet or something like that, came with this 32-page booklet that kind of acts as the lyric sheet. I'm not going to get into all of this because I definitely could spend a lot of time just going over this. But essentially, it's got some cool artwork in it. It's got the middle cover in there in the middle again, and then it's got like the lyrics and the track lists, and then the credits below each one. So yeah, definitely high quality release. If you get the chance, definitely check it out. Again, the booklet is just so cool. And then the actual vinyl that I got, I think it was just like the first pressing that they did, is the clear pressing, which is pretty cool. I like and I dislike clear pressings for a couple reasons. Number one, I think that they always sound pretty good, and it's definitely one of the easier pressings. Like, what you're gonna get, unlike some splatters or like color bursts and stuff like that. It may not look exactly how the mock-up. With clear or solid color, it usually always does. My one issue with clear records is that it's harder to tell, like, when they're dirty, if there's any scratches, stuff like that. Shouldn't be a huge issue as long as you keep your stuff clean and you're making sure that they're stored properly. But I definitely can see how that could be a detriment in the future to certain things. Outside of that, though, it sounds phenomenal. I just played it today. Thank God I did, too, because listening to this thing on vinyl was such a different experience. But that's it for the physical release. Let's dive into the actual album itself. All right, so before I get into the track list and like my overall thoughts about the album, I do want to preface this by saying I'm not like the biggest the fan that ever existed. I like a couple of the stuff from like his early career, like the early albums from the 80s, but I haven't really dived into like his full discography outside of like Uncertain Smile and Today is the Day. I can't probably name you a single track that I had really listened to over and over again on repeat, but I heard enough of his stuff over the years, or enough of their stuff over the years, that I've always been a fan, and they're always something I've been meaning to get more into. And I've been listening to Soul Mining a lot recently. I don't know why I haven't like branched out to the other ones, but that album in particular has just been on repeat in my lineup for the last like 4 or 5 months. So when I found out this album was coming out, I kind of just jumped on top of it and was going in without expecting or knowing too much or anticipating too much, because I loved the album artwork. I loved the idea. It's their first album in 25 years. And, based off just my experience listening to the band or Matt Johnson's, work, I knew that I was going to be a fan, like, no matter what it was. That being said, I didn't listen to any singles before this came out. I kind of wanted it to be a raw experience for me. And the first couple listens, I couldn't really get into it. It didn't really grab me or hook me. I don't know if that's because I was just listening on Spotify while I was like driving or at work, and I couldn't really focus it on it as much as I should have. And then when I got the record today and was playing it through and taking my notes to do this review, my attitude and opinion on it almost completely shifted. And it is, I have to say, probably one of my favorite albums of the year, and it's a beautifully done album. So overall, I definitely get some like strong Nick Cave vibes on this. It's very much like goth rock, southern goth rock, a lot of heavy piano, very like dark and depressing moods throughout the entire album, even on the songs that are like lyrically much happier than some of the other ones. But yeah, it's definitely something that I wasn't expecting based on how much I've been listening to Soul Mining, because they don't sound anything alike. Now, to be fair, I did some like other research into his like later albums that I hadn't really had a chance to listen to yet, and I guess he does get pretty dark and brooding on some of his later stuff. But I mean, it's definitely kind of came out of left field for me. That being said, I thought it was done super, super well. So let's dive in with the first track. It's going to be Cognitive Dissident. Now, this was an interesting one. It's really cool, brooding, little ominous, which again, it kind of sets the tone for the entire album. The vocals, again, like my first immediate thought was like Nick Cave, or even like some of the gruff like Leonard Cohen stuff. Not quite as gruff as like Tom Waits, but I definitely like see some influence there. It's got like these really dark and dreamy guitars on it. The backing vocals, the kind of choir-like vocals, really complement his voice really well. But then it takes us into Sometimes I Drink My Coffee by The Grave of William Blake, which that is a hell of a song title. This is probably the most just like lyrically gothic track on the album, talking about literally like walking through a graveyard and some very like just kind of depressive themes, but the music is beautiful. It's really catchy. It's like his vocals are super soulful on this. The piano goes super hard. Then it gets into Zen and the Art of Dating, which is a pretty brutal, scathing review of like modern dating culture. Essentially, it's attacking like the concept of one night stands and how, empty and easy it is to just use dating apps to swipe left or right and find someone for tonight, but not, develop anything meaningful. It's got this really like kind of pulsating beat, dark and haunting guitars and kind of like bass on top of it. There's some like pounding organ throughout it as well, but it's not like overwhelming. It's just kind of sitting there like complementing the rest of the arrangement. And the guitar parts are a little all over the place, but it does complement the rest of it really well. Keeping with this really sort of like ominous and dark and depressing tone, at least like the beginning of this album is really kind of setting. And this is like, it was around at this point when I like my first couple of listens that like all of these songs, they don't necessarily blend together, but they've got very similar like vibes and tones. And I was getting the opinion that I was like, all right, am I listening to a new song or what? But when I finally listened to it on vinyl today, I could hear the subtleties and the distinct differences between them, and I definitely appreciate it a lot more. From there, it goes into Kissing the Ring of POTUS, which is, again, a pretty brutal observation of what I think is way too prevalent in today's politics, which is treating politicians as fucking celebrities. Like, they're supposed to work for us. You're not supposed to be a diehard fan of, like, whoever you support. And I try not to get political on this channel, but, like, the concept of just, like, ignoring a politician's, policy or flaws or anything like that, and just holding them in such a high regard that, like, they could do no wrong in your eyes. And I think that's just on both sides of the aisle, like, rampant right now. So definitely appreciated the theme from that. This track, it's a little jazzy in its arrangement as well. The bass is like pretty plucky and a little like jumpy. The guitars are, complemented very well, but they're not like, super rock oriented. They're much more like tonal and like kind of soundscape, wall of soundish. A little repetitive in certain parts. I think I did see a lot of similar tones on this track as like the three before it, but still a fun song. Definitely, continuing down like the dark and depressing theme of the album. Then we get into Life After Life, and this is the first like tonal shift that I felt in the album. It feels a little bit more upbeat, if not still like a little bit gothic, a little bit dark, but it at least like the melodies and stuff a little bit like, more positive sounding. There's a certain swagger in his vocals that like especially comes through in this song. That, I mean, the whole thing, like the vocal performance on this whole thing is incredible. But specifically on this song, you feel like he's really getting into it. It's a nice contrast to the darkness that was like the previous four songs, where it feels like you're kind of being brought back up a little bit, which then culminates in the next track of I Want to Wake Up With You, which is just a genuine fucking love song, which came out a little left field for me, but it was a nice kind of like breath of fresh air, because as much as I love like dark music and goth music in particular, it's nice to have just like a boom bright spot on an album like this. It's got this almost like kind of lounge piano opening, but then when the guitar kicks in like around the halfway point, it just took my breath away, and it's such a powerful song. There's some great like blues licks as well, like towards the end of it, and it's probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. From there we get into Down by the Frozen River. This is pretty much an entirely spoken word piece, at least from a vocal performance. It's got some like sharp pounding piano with, again, that kind of like upright sort of organic bass feel, and then some like wailing guitar notes towards the end of it, or not, full on wailing, but at least in the concept of this album. Then it gets into Risen Above the Need, which is kind of like a more upbeat, bluesy kind of pop rock track, or at least, again, comparatively with what's been on the album. It's got some pretty groovy rhythm sections, and then the guitar work is really like upbeat and fun. Definitely another highlight on the album, which then interestingly gets into Linoleum on the Stockinged Feet, which is a like big tonal shift again. It gets back into sort of the more like dark brooding aesthetics that were on the like first part of the album, but it's got this like really pulsating beat underlying the majority of it, which is like borderline electronic, which, coming from like a new wave and post-punk background, I was a little bummed I didn't get some more of this on the album, but it works really, really well. The synth line that goes through it is really eerie and like off-putting. The guitar is a little like atmospheric and borderline apocalyptic, but it's a really killer track. It's definitely the weirdest one, or like one of the weirdest ones on the album, but I love weird experimental music, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Then we get into the last three songs on the album, starting with Where Do We Go When We Die? And if that's not just, the perfect title for a goth rock song, I don't know what is. But it's kind of kicking the energy back up a little bit. It's a fun little like borderline indie rock track with some really like kind of funky guitar work, some laid back vocals. It's got like this steady like egg shaker percussion going throughout it that just keeps this like steady vibe going. A lot of fun. Again, it's a good tonal shift. Definitely keeping things, sonically at least, familiar but different enough that you don't feel like you're just listening to the same stuff over and over again. From there it goes into Hope You Remember, The Things That I Can't Forget. This is like borderline, has some like rockabilly vibes to it. It's got like heavy like southern goth feeling. I'm getting a lot of like Nick Cave vibes on this one. And then the guitar is just super playful on it as well. And then the album finishes off with A Rainy Day in May. This is a great, just like, again, straight up southern rock track. Modern blues sort of melody kind of sitting behind it. It's got arguably, I think, like one of the most diverse vocal performances on the album, where he's changing his pitch and inflection a lot. This song honestly is just like a straight up vibe. Like as I was listening to it the final time on vinyl and like sitting on my couch, I literally just wanted to like sink into my couch and get lost in there and just kind of get absorbed into this song. And it's just such an amazing way to finish off the album. But yeah, overall, like I really did end up enjoying this. It takes a few listens. You got to be into this kind of music. You got to be, you know, a little bit more open-minded if you like only know the couple hits from the like I did, kind of going into this, at least outside of, you know, that one album. But it's definitely worth the listen if you're a rock and roll fan, if you're a blues rock fan, if you're you know, goth rock fan. Like it checks all those boxes super well. So yeah, guys, that's why I'm feeling a minus on this album. Like it's a lot of fun. It's not going to be for everybody. If you don't like this type of music, you're not going to like it. But unfortunately, I think this is going to fly under a lot of people's radar this year. If you're watching this, if you're checking out my channel, please go listen to it. If you already have, great on you. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you haven't, yeah, like I said, definitely put this on your list to give a listen. Even if you don't listen to it again, it'll be worth the journey the first time. So that's going to be it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.